Okay, so we're going to carry on. It's a combination little demonstration this time. It's including weeding. It's also looking at what happens next to the potatoes and what else you can use the potato beds for while they're growing potatoes. Well, how about that? So this first bed we're looking at, it's looking a little bit weedy. And this is a bed which is used to grow potatoes in the traditional sort of way, which is digging trenches, putting organic matter in the bottom of the trench and putting the potatoes down there, then covering them up. And as you can see, they've started appearing, but at the same time as they're appearing, so are the weeds. And interestingly, for no extra cost, we have two kinds of bindweed here. So this one here is field bindweed. It's flatter to the ground. These are all the same. And then we've got the hedge bindweed, which is this taller growing, very slender plant, and neither of them do we want. Well, in the process of dealing with our potatoes, we will also deal with these weeds, and again, because we're not digging them out, it's not a permanent solution, but it will help. And all we're going to do is what's called earthing up. So we go for the weeds, and at the same time we're bringing soil down around the potatoes. Now it is a little bit soon to be doing this on these potatoes. They normally need doing when they're about 15 centimetres high, 6 inches, and then you draw the soil up around the foliage like that, and you do it this part from this side of the bed and this side from the other side of the bed. So from here I will also reach over and get me dandelion there. I don't particularly want that one to stay in, I don't think. So the earthing up is done from different sides. It's just not very easy to pull the soil up like that. I can do it. There you are. Shows you how versatile one can be. And it's a combination weeding and earthing up. Well, that's great for the traditional method, but our other bed here is the non-traditional method, which is the no-dig one. And we've still got the weed problem. There's bindweed in here. There's the hedge bindweed, little bits of field bindweed, and also the mare's tail, or sorry, correctly, horsetail. They are different plants, mare's tail and horsetail. Okay, and what I'll do where I can see the weeds, I will actually decapitate them, as long as they're not too close to potatoes, not disturbing the soil. Not too much anyway. And on a hot day like this, those will actually die off fairly quickly. But then you are saying, oh, you idiots, what about all the earthing up of our no-dig potatoes? Well, effectively you'd still earth them up, but instead of moving the soil around, it's a no-dig after all, you end up having to use organic matter. And we've already used a load of compost on these. If you've got lots and lots of compost, then keep on using it. The potatoes will love it. We haven't, so I'll just use more low-grade organic matter, which in this case is just a load of grass clippings. So from around the sides of the plot, I can pull out some bindweed as I go. Incidentally, if you knew there was a frost coming, and we have had some cold nights, not quite enough for a frost, more recently anyway, you could simply, during the day, put this over the potato plants, and it will protect them, and they'll grow through that in the following day probably. Anyway, there we are. You keep on doing that all the way along the row, and you've got your earthing up, and you keep on doing it, keep on adding to it. The other good thing about the no-dig potatoes that you can't really do with the traditional method, and that's put in some other plants in amongst them. Well, potatoes will eventually close up and fill up the whole bed, but it doesn't mean you can't put one or two things in there in some gaps. And what we've got are just some companion plants to not necessarily to help potatoes, but to bring in insects, hoverflies for example, and bees as well. Love this little plant, which there's a lettuce in there. You've got to have a lettuce, but this little plant here is something called a poached eggplant, and so it has a yellow and white flower, and it's a perfect landing pad for hovering insects. So all we need to do is find the gaps, and at the moment they're going to be gaps for quite a long time yet. In between the two rows we can put in one or two of these. And we can't on the traditional bed because the soil's just going to get moved all over the place. So that's poached eggplant. There's also these which really need to be moved on a bit. These are what are called calendula, or pot marigold, English marigold, several names. And I think if you kind of find the gaps, so there's a potato there, there's a potato here, so the triangle of the two, let's go for one in the middle there. A little bit stony. Bindweed over there. Great, water those in. One thing I probably should have said before doing any of this, certainly in terms of the no-dig bed, is before you put the grass down, give it a good water so you're trapping in some moisture. It's effectively a kind of mulching, and you would always put a mulch down on top of a moist surface. So it would just be a matter of going over the plants after you've taken the weeds out. Freight train in history. Other stuff you can use, wood chip, leaf mould, anything you can get your hands on. It's not so much feeding the plants as protecting them and stopping them going green. And it also looks good. That'll do for that. Thank you.